Hey my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video.
Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you guys had a good weekend. So it's Monday, March 25th. So over the weekend I did catch a lot of you guys making comments about the integral video and the attempt to fix and the missing of the install of the additional packages. I'm aware of the install and the additional packages. I just haven't installed them yet. I was hoping that we could secure what we have first before we start rolling out changes. So in today's video, we're going to cover a couple different things. The first thing we're going to go over is the LGPO.EXE, which is it's a utility that allows us to back up and take the group policy configuration off of our currently running secure Windows XP machine. And we'll take that group policy and we'll import it into the interval edition of Windows XP. And we'll use that package to lock down the actual system to see if that helps us with our SMB issues first. After we have that imported, we'll run another scan to check that system. If the scan still comes back bad, then we'll start to dig down further into the registry configuration to see if we could maybe take a backup of a properly configured Windows XP system and re-import that backup into the integral system to kind of combine and fix the issues that are, the operating system points that are missing in that system. At which point, if that still gives us issues, then we'll start to look into the possibility of backing up the integral edition and using the backup or the configuration of the backup to import certain aspects of that system into a properly configured Windows XP system. I have a feeling this is going to be probably a 3 or 4 part video. Hopefully I'll be able to release at least one of these parts every day. However, it really depends on how well things go during our process. So without further ado, let's take a backup of the currently running XP machine you see in front of you here. And let's back up the group policy configuration for our import on our other system. Stay tuned. Hey guys, so unfortunately, as much as I'd love to show you how to manually import these GPOs, Microsoft has end-of-lifed the LGPO.MSI or LGPO local.MSI, which was the old school version of the Microsoft Manager or Security Manager. They replaced it with LGPO.EXE, which doesn't work on anything older than what appears as Windows Vista. So Vista is the cutoff, so it won't work on XP. This is pretty close to the same type of errors that you're going to run into if you try to run the Steam client. And since I've already been down that loophole, or rather, I should say rabbit hole. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole chasing it for this particular project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add this current system to my domain controller. And I'm going to push the updated group policies to it, as well as the ADMX and ADML files to it. So that way I could fix the missing packages in the integral system as far as the group policy configuration is concerned. Now, I don't think this is going to fix the registry disconnect that we found in the previous video, where when we made the group policy changes, it didn't touch the registry, that there's a switch or a disconnect between the GUI and the actual OS. But it should at least give us the ability at this point to test to see if that makes any difference from a security compliance standpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the firewall on this system. And once I disable the firewall on the system and re-enable the SMB on this configuration, I'll get the system added to the domain. And then I'll kick off this video once I have the system added to the domain so we can review the group policy configurations to see if we're still getting the disconnect in our registry, between our registry and our policy configuration. Now what I plan on doing is pushing the ADML and ADMX templates initially for the 2009 ready system, so the policy configuration that would have been standard on your point of sale system. I plan on pushing those first to make sure I have at least the base configuration correctly configured on this XP machine, since from what I could tell, it looks like at least part of this system is using the 2009 base. I don't want to push the XP Service Pack 1 to it. It already has it on there. The XP Service Pack 3 configuration doesn't exist on here, but the point of sale system from 2009 is kind of a mismatch of the configuration of Service Pack 1, 2, and 3, where you get some but not all of the configuration. So let's get the push over to this thing first for the 2009 POS ready configuration, And then once we have that done, let's push the Service Pack 3 configuration. And then once that's done, I'll push the Windows 10 ADMX and ADML configuration upgrade to Windows 10, and then push out the group policy configuration for the CIS benchmark for Windows 10. And let's take a look at that point to see if that helps us as far as securing the actual vanilla operating system. Okay, so we're running a backup now on our actually good Windows XP machine. Understand that we're going to try to do a restore specifically from the disk first using the Windows XP Service Pack 3 disk. If that doesn't work, we might try to do a restore using our Point of Sale 2009 disk to see if that'll allow us to restore the registry and fix the actual OS. If we still have issues with that, what we may do is we may see if we could restore that operating system using a repair method through command line using the backup we're taking here from the XP machine. Now, keep in mind that the DISM commands like you find in Windows 10 and 11 don't really exist in Windows XP. That's not really an option, although it may be possible for us to hybrid the DISM extensions into the actual operating system from a 32-bit Windows 10 machine and use them to run a in-place upgrade, not upgrade, but repair. Again, keep in mind, DISM won't allow us to use like the online repair services because that doesn't exist in this operating system. So let's jump over back to the integral system. Let's reboot it, and then let's hit the F key to get us into the repair console through the boot disk. And let's see what we come up with. Hopefully we can fix this thing. Okay, so we popped the disk in the drive. This is the integral system, and let's restart this thing and get back into the console. So, on reboot, interestingly, booting off of a disk doesn't recognize the version of operating system that this thing is running as Windows XP, Service Pack 2, 3, or Point of Sale system. Maybe not all that surprisingly. So, what I did is I stuck with the Service Pack 3 disk ISO installation files and did the boot. And after I booted off the disk, I was granted a screen here that indicates that I could upgrade this system to Windows XP Service Pack 3 from whatever it is that it's actually running. So let's take a look at this and see if it's actually possible for us to upgrade this to Windows XP Service Pack 3. So I'm going to click on Next under the Upgrade. So we could do a new installation, but we're going to just do an upgrade. And we're going to choose Yes, we accept. So now it's going to ask me for a product key. So I'm going to enter in my product key and see if it allows me to continue on. And wouldn't you know it, it does. It allows me to continue on. Okay, so do I want to download the updated file settings, or do I want to continue the Windows installation as is? So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to actually choose to skip. And the reason why is because if you read the actual information here, it indicates that it's going to connect to the Microsoft website. And since this is XP and that site likely doesn't exist any longer, and for the sake that this operating system's kind of modified, I don't know where that stands from a legal standpoint with Windows XP, so I'm just going to click on No to skip this and continue the installation, and click on Next. So it's going to prepare to do the install and reboot. Once it reboots, I'll continue the video here and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we rebooted. Now we're in the process of continuing our installation or our configuration. We'll see what happens during this process. I'll be honest, I don't have too much faith in this working. So color me surprised if this actually finishes out and we have an operating system that functions. Well, we're continuing on. We already did a reboot. System came back up and let me know that we're working on our exciting new look for our upgrade of Windows XP. Okay guys, so this has been going now for probably about 5 to 10 minutes that I'm sitting here waiting for this thing to actually boot. So this may be a done deal at this point. I'll continue to wait and hold off for probably a good 30 or so minutes to see if this finishes the process of repairing the operating system. But if it doesn't, we'll kick off from where we backed up the OS before we got to this point. Okay guys, so we have officially cut back. During the installation process, I got a notification that the OS was unable to be repaired, that there were vast amounts of errors, and that basically the operating system was done.
when I was actually able to boot it up into safe mode and take a look into it, there's an attempt to merge the operating systems, and some of the event log indicates that the operating system itself was running XP Service Pack 1. Some of it indicated that it was running Windows 2000. Some of it indicated that it was running Vista. And some of it was running Point of Sale, but not the Point of Sale 2009 Ready Edition, the old Point of Sale edition. So I'm guessing there's kind of a clustered design here where we're merging a variety of operating systems to attempt to do whatever it is we're doing. So I reverted. And now what I've done is I've decided that maybe what we could do is we could use Windows Update to fix the issue. So I kicked off the WSUS updater, the offline updater. And in doing that, I ran the updates on the system. And I created a text file for an output just because there was a series of updates and a series of reboots that are required to get to this point. So I figured rather than going through that whole process, I would just save you guys the output of the actual updates, well, at least the first updates. The second series of updates was just 3. There were security patches from the later revision of the operating system, which is technically the Point of Sale 2009 edition, because it does have the Point of Sale registry edit in it out of the box from the Integral website. So what I did is I took a look here and specifically looked at the KBs that we have, and we have KB 958644. We have that KB a second time with additional information, and we have it again, KB 4012598. Then we have 4012583. And then we have 4018271. Now, if you go through these updates, what you'll find is these are the SMB patches for the WannaCry virus, as well as a variety of patches for the man-in-the-middle issue that we found in the previous scan. Now, why these patches aren't applied to the system from the get-go is beyond me, because according to the website, this contained all of the updates. But I don't know why it's missing specific updates that have to do with security, especially like ransomware security. Got me. But it is missing those. So if you guys want to just stop here, take a look at this screen, great. If not, I'll put the link in the video for the other XP video that has the link for the WSUS Offline. Just grab that link and download that installer and run it on the Integral Edition. You'll get the WannaCry ransomware patches for the Integral Edition. So now that we have those patched, and we've reverted the operating system back before we did the configuration, we still know that we're missing parts of the registry. We still know that we're missing parts of the ADML and ADMX structure. And we still know that we can't run the LGPO local.MSI file because of the issue with the with Microsoft end-of-lifing the security thing for XP. And since this system will never be on the internet, the truth is we could add it to our domain controller and then revert our domain controller back after the fact and test it to see if we could add our ADMX and ADML templates to it to upgrade the templates to at least the Service Pack 3 revision. And then we could push our CIS benchmarks to it and see if that makes any difference at all. Also keeping in mind that we still have the problems with the registry. We still have parts of the operating system that don't connect to the registry. So let's see if we could use those configurations from the CIS benchmark to secure this thing, and we'll run a scan against it. Obviously, that's not going to fix the holes in the OS, but it may fix the security issues in the OS. And if that resolves the security issue, at least that is a proof of concept as to how to lock this thing down. If that still doesn't fix it, at that point, I'm going to scrap this vanilla configuration and see if we could use the actual Windows XP Service Pack 3 build that we have to import the configuration standards from the integral configuration into that as the template and see if that resolves the issues. So stick around. Let's see if we could secure this system. Okay, guys, so welcome back. We added the machine to the domain. I haven't added any group policies yet. With that said, we are on the domain. I'll show you here. Computer name, ytd.local. So we have a static IP address. We have the MyPal application up here for our internet access. If you look at our start menu here, or our old programs, you can see the programs that are installed on the actual system. Interestingly, we have the Microsoft Update Catalog, which is defaulted as our default update location for our site, which is interesting. And if we look It's looking for point of sale ready 2009 edition now, which is also interesting. Do have Internet Explorer 8, which is once again interesting, but that's to be expected since we added it to the domain, and the default domain policy is going to dictate some of these configuration settings. So let's take a look at what else we got running here. We're going to look for remote registry. Yep, disabled. So keep in mind that if you have XP of any generation, regardless of whether or not it's Integral Edition, this is enabled by default. The default domain policy on the domain controller disables this, but if not, it's enabled by default. You want to disable that on Windows XP as any version, any flavor of XP. It's not a good idea to keep that on, especially in today's day and age. At the time, it wasn't really a big deal. A lot of people used it for like PS exec to get into the system. You don't need that anymore. We're looking at the rest of the configuration. So we have Windows Firewall started and set to automatic. Again, that's part of the default domain policy that's going to turn that stuff on. Let's look at the GP edit. We should see some configuration changes in here. Not necessarily enforced or set, but at least in here. Yep, so here we go. This is part of the later configuration for the additional ADML and ADMX templates, these particular settings. So we did grow the policy configuration, at least on our integral system, to include the additional settings. Let's go to administrative templates and see if we have... IE settings, do we have... so we don't have the ones for Google, which is okay. The old school ones for Windows Update, that's fine. All right, so we do have policies that have applied as far as like our configuration is concerned. And I don't mean like they're actually applied. I mean like the ADML and ADMX templates have updated on the XP system. So I think the next step is here. So let's reboot this system. But before we do so, let's jump over our domain controller and let's set the policy for this particular system. Okay, so now we're in Active Directories domain controller. Specifically, what we're looking at here is we want to go into computers, which is where our default machine is. That's our integral system. I'm going to go into staging. I'm going to expand XP, and there's the integral folder that I want to put in. This is literally just going to drag it and drop it into integral. Yeah, put it in there. Don't show me that again. So now there's the XP machine. So now we got to go over into our group policy configuration. And let's just refresh this so that way it'll actually populate the information. So we go in there, and there's the integral system. We're going to block the inheritance. And then we're going to link an existing GPO in here. And what we're going to look for is, let's put the WSUS policy on this thing. Let's also go into here and look for our Windows 10 non-compliant configuration. It doesn't really matter on this particular system because the difference between the compliant and the non-compliant, for the sake of testing this, is the compliant has UAC enabled, but there is no UAC in Windows XP, so it makes no difference. So we're just going to apply those two policies to this particular system. And now let's jump back over to our XP machine. Let's GP update it and reboot that system. Okay, so now we're back in the XP system. So we're going to go into Run, CMD. We're going to do GP update, force. Okay, so the policies have refreshed. So it's not enough that we could see that the policies have refreshed because it says the policies have refreshed. Let's check this. So to do this, we're going to CD / and CD to change the directory to Windows and then System32. And then we're going to go to a hidden directory called group policy. It's going to be one word. So in here now, we're going to do dir and check the date. So there we go. It's currently 2:15 p.m. on this machine. So at 2:11 p.m., that's the last time the gpt.ini file was updated. And then we see the rest of the information here. So the reason why the time screwed up on this particular machine is because the TZ edit patch, while it's part of the package for the integral system to install, it doesn't work right. So unless you run it as a service in the background on Windows XP, you'll end up with time skew. That's just a normal issue on Windows XP. Don't pay too much attention to it. But for the sake of this, what we're going to look for specifically is the dates. So that's today. Understand that the gpt.ini file is the file that gets read from as far as what applies for group policy. Then the machine is the computer policies that get applied. User is the user policies that get applied. The ADM file or ADM folder itself is renamed to something called data store in Windows 7, Windows 8, 8.1, 10, and 11. But that's the file, that's the folder that stores the configuration files. So when you apply group policy to a client, when you run a GP update, what it's actually doing is it's downloading the policy to that data store template folder or ADM folder, and then the GPT-ini file reads from that ADM file or the data store file and migrates and moves the actual configuration settings to either machines or users. That's the way policy is supposed to work. Now, if you're running a domain controller that's ancient or hasn't been correctly upgraded past the legacy configuration, you may not see this ADM or the data store folder. And the reason for that is because it's going to do a live read from your domain controller every time and then cache that information in machines and users. And that's important to keep in mind because if you have remote users that use that configuration, you can run into a real problem when those remote users are remote and you need to update something on their machine. You change a policy configuration and it doesn't work through the VPN. And the reason why is because the VPN is only going to download it to that data store or ADM directory. And if they don't exist, then your clients on the end user side, which don't have, are on a VPN that aren't in the office often, they're not getting group policy. So that's something just to keep in mind. So what we're going to do now is we're going to reboot the system and it'll apply these policy changes, and I'll start the video once the system comes back up. Okay, so we're back at the system. We're going to just log into this system. Okay, so we're back in Windows. And now we're going to go back into the group policy on the local machine here. And in here, we're going to see under the Windows settings, let's go back under local policies. Let's go to security settings. All right, so that looks better. We're still missing some configuration settings that I noticed in here, but it doesn't appear that we're missing all of the configurations in here. So now let's go another step into this thing and let's take a look at our Windows Firewall policy to see if that's still all screwy on this machine. I assume it will be because we don't have a policy set for the old school version of the Windows Firewall. And we may have to make that change and take a look at that to see if that's something we could do to maybe secure the system a little bit. So we're still allowing remote assistance. We don't need that. We don't need the diagnostics. We could actually delete that out of here. Said okay. That's okay. That's fine. All right. So we're back. Let's take another look at here. So we still have that, the ASP configuration for .NET. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's take a scan of this machine and let's see what it comes back with now that we have our policy roughly configured on here. And let's see what that comes back with. And then once we get that scan result back, let's build a Windows XP firewall configuration for the system and see if that makes a difference. Now, what I plan to do on our firewall configuration is simply just create a Windows firewall configuration that blocks, access to the known ports from outside locations. So that for the sake of our scanner, it's still going to show us an issue, even though the issue wouldn't technically exist. Okay, guys, so the system is being scanned as we speak. I do want to let you know that I did go back through the system a little bit. I did some configurations on the firewall configuration. I added some blocks for the port configuration for the firewall. And I also added the a couple settings into the XP configuration to try to secure this a little better. I applied all those configuration changes and settings. We should be able to see them inside of the group policy editor itself, but let's take a look to see if we see the changes that occurred Yeah, so here we go. We have all these account configuration changes and settings changes. These are all things that exist in the Windows XP ADML and ADMX templates that weren't necessarily on this system. We could see like the xadmin in here, which is the change for the administrator account, and then visitor is the change for the guest account on the actual machine, and then the requirements for like strong authentication. For instance, here we have the add-on now. We could use FIPS. So if we hit enable on this thing and enable FIPS compliant, when it does the actual scan, will show us FIPS. Now, a lot of this stuff, these changes that are in here, are registry changes that take place on the back end when you actually apply the group policy settings. And the reason I did it this way is so I don't have to go through 15 million different configuration settings changes on the XP machine to actually fix the problems in this integral system. So we do know already that we have some problems with our group policy configurations, our registry configurations, and our GUI, and the interaction between the operating system and the actual file itself. So I don't know if these are actually taking place 100% on the back end in the registry, but we should be able to tell shortly once that scan is finished running on the actual machine, and that should provide us with details as to what the heck the actual problems are on this machine. So once I get the result back for that, I will provide that. But let's also take a look at the group policy output. So I created a text file. I didn't do that live because I know my keyboard's loud. I don't want to annoy anybody. I get it. If you're listening to headphones, that would be really annoying. But, it's an IBM M keyboard. And if you guys know anything about the Model M's, then you know that there's really nothing better to type on. So I don't see that going away anytime soon. Maybe eventually I can get a better mic so it doesn't pick it up as clearly. So let's take a look at the result real quick. So this is the group policy result. This gives us all the information for this particular machine as far as what the actual policy configurations are. So we have user rights assignments, and there's security options and the administrative templates, and there's a lot of configuration in here. And this is all the stuff that you would generally apply to a Windows-based machine in order to actually secure the desktop. And this goes for all versions. This is not just limited to Windows XP, but in each version they added additional configuration changes to actually lock down the systems. And generally speaking, every desktop that's out there that's at a home doesn't have any of this as far as the configuration is concerned. I'm sure there's people that have passwords and whatnot, but the likelihood of you having all 100+ configuration changes on your desktop are pretty slim to none. So that with that said, let's continue on the scan process. And let's take a look at this machine once the scan process finishes. And let's figure out what, and if anything, if we've improved anything. Well, I don't mean to like toot my own horn, but there we go. So that is without the firewall turned on. That's with all the group policy configuration for the CIS benchmark in place on the XP machine. That's with the patches that were missing from the WSUS Offline installer. That is the operating system. So if you notice, we only have 8 infos, and if we wanted to, we could probably go through these things and lock these down as well. But at this point, I would say that's how we would secure the operating system. Unfortunately, unless somebody out there has a link that they could provide to me for the LPO local.MSI file for the old Microsoft security configuration, where I could do an export of the CIS benchmark with the XP controls and configurations in place, I would gladly put those someplace where you guys could grab them and then just re-import them, and I'd create a video on how to import them using the LPGO configuration tool. The thing is I just can't find it anywhere. So if anybody has that out there, please throw me a link in the description somewhere as to where I could grab the old MSI configuration tool for the group policy settings, and I'll gladly build you guys out the policy config, put them on like Google Drive or something, and give you guys access to them to grab those files. But once you have those things applied, once you have the WSUS Offline updates applied, and once you've deleted that admin account, followed the first 2 videos here, this thing's pretty secure. We're pretty much set at this point as from a security standpoint on locking this thing down so it's not tracking, listening, SMB configuration bugging, or anything else. Definitely let me know in the comments if you guys want to see a shortened version of these couple videos combined with a step-by-step process of how to actually get to this point with securing this operating system. I would gladly do it. My next release for video, I'll apply all the updates and software that was included in the package, and then we'll go from there to see if there's any additional changes or configurations we need to make in order for this to take place. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these videos. Thanks for sticking around.